today we are going to explore why we need schools to have a clear software audit. With budgets tighter than ever, every school needs to ensure that they've got the specific skills that they need to truly make learning transformational and impactful. And this isn't just about balancing books, it's about linking directly to what Ofsted and the ISI have all commented on, which is to make sure that you are evidencing your hardware, your software, to make sure that it is going the distance and it is having the impact that you want it to have. So, without further ado, today's podcast title is Why Software Audits Matter, Strengthening Leadership, Strategy and Making Sure Students are Gaining the Impact They Need. So, let's have a look at a bit of the national context. We all know at the moment the economy is not where we want it to be, and more importantly, for decades, the educational budget has not been what it needs to be. We've all seen the impact that this has had, not just on teachers, but all the way down to students as well. Schools and trusts, they're under increasing pressure to have a strong digital strategy and a strong financial plan to make the most of pretty much nothing, if we're being really honest with ourselves. So the Department of Education has highlighted that cost-effective decisions must be made. And that digital strategy and that plan is the building blocks of that. But what is more often overlooked is the financial aspect of software. More and more schools, when you go in, they don't necessarily have the time or the resources to really think about the impact that their software is having, or more importantly, a way to evidence it numerically, to actually say to Ofsted, well, actually, this is what we do, this is how we look at our software, and this is the impact that our software is having, this is how we make those financial decisions. So really, I just wanted to have a chat and a talk about what I've created and to see whether or not it is something that you guys will be interested in. So over the past few years, there's been changes by Ofsted, especially more than ever. But the new handbook does say that we need to be very careful with our finances, again, for obvious reasons, okay? So the new Ofsted framework says, the impact, I'm going to read this word to word, the impact of the systems and processes leaders use to support the continuous improvement and effective running of the school. A part of this, again, is software. It covers that sentence, naturally covers a whole plethora of systems. But again, just for this, podcast, we're focusing on that software element. And again, it's because it probably is one of those things that is most overlooked. It's something that can easily just dissipate into the back of people's minds, and more often than not, then you'll come to the next financial year, and suddenly you'll have all of these software, and you're not actually sure who's got what, why they've got it, and again, the impact of it. So the DfE stresses the importance of strong digital and financial planning. And one of the things that a software audit allows is for you to have a look at the following. You can identify underused subscriptions, especially since most of them will be costing you money, no doubt. You can highlight duplicated tools. Now, one of the things which I went to recently was a Google meeting at their headquarters, and I'm not advocating Google necessarily, but what I am saying is if you think very carefully about the systems that you've got, you'd be surprised with a little bit of modification just how much they can do what you want them to do. So this specific school, I've actually invited him to have a chat at some point with you guys, but he literally uses Google, nothing else. He uses an MIS, of course, that is it. Everything else, for example, Timetable Rockstars, within the Google Workspace, you can create apps. And when I say create apps, I don't mean you as a teacher or senior leader have to sit there programming. That's not what we're on about. We're trying to, increase the impact whilst decreasing workload. So what AI does is it will just make the app for you. You'll type it in and you'll say, I want a game literally mirroring Timetable Rockstars with a point system, and I want it to make sure that the data can be exported for analytical purposes, and within 60 seconds it made this. And again, this is just an example. But why use TT Rockstars when you can pay a little bit more money to Google a whole lot less than Timetable Rockstars, and you get it all done. But more importantly, you can mould it and modify it to what you want. So if there's a feature missing in TT Rockstars and you're thinking, gosh, I wish this feature was there, and you know it's not coming, well, actually, if you use Google Apps, you can make it literally whatever you want it to be. Provision maps is another one. I made an app whilst I was there, and it was literally doing what provision maps said for Senkos. So what I think I'm trying to get at here is, if you just think carefully and talk to your technicians, talk to me, there is probably software out there that can do what you want it to do, and it's probably either free or it's at a minimal cost, by just being a little bit more creative and actually just knowing what's out there. And you guys don't necessarily know everything that's out there. For example, you didn't go to Google like myself and a few others did. So talk to us and we'll share our expertise, which is hopefully what this podcast is helping you guys to see. So I suppose highlighting those duplicated tools is something that an audit can do really, really well, and it's more often underutilized. It can also compare costs against what is already out there. So there might be another company who can do it slightly cheaper, and actually you're thinking, well, I'm glad I took the time to look at the alternatives because it's going to save us money. You can also use that as an opportunity to justify whether you're going to renew something or not. So it's not just saying, well, actually, I don't think we're going to go ahead to a member of, head of departments and say, don't think we're going to go ahead with this. Realistically, we don't have the budget for it. It should never just be about money. It should be about a range of factors, money being part of it. But actually, here's an alternative. The alternative is it's free. Okay, I understand it's not quite as good, but it's better than, not having anything at this stage. Alternatively, you might say, well, actually, if we just are a little bit creative and pay for this, we get a whole range of other features, not bespoke to your subject, but it can also encompass it. So it just allows those dialogues and those justifications to come through in a robust way, rather than just, we can't afford it. Because, again, that's not something schools should be saying. It should be saying, okay, we want this, how can we get it? So this isn't just an IT issue. This is something which should be driving your curriculums. And we've all seen at the moment, and this is partially why this discussion and making this video now is moving forward. Obviously, we've got the new SEND and the changes coming in there. And I suppose what I don't necessarily want to encourage schools to do is to panic and buy a range of SEND, softwares and hardwares without sitting and really evaluating, this is our curriculum, this is what we need, how can we get it, rather than simply, this software does this is going to be quite useful. And I know we do this anyway, but it's going to be really useful, I think, to have it on just one spreadsheet so you can compare and contrast and find trends in an easy way. So I think this also strengthens that communication with parents. So one of the things that I've struggled, I think, with as a parent is when my son goes off to school, goodness gracious me, the amount of platforms that I have to sign up for to look at progress. And I try to remember all of these names of all the different softwares and usernames and passwords. It's overwhelming, and I work in IT. Imagine people and parents who perhaps aren't IT literate, or, the EAL, for example. It's really important, I think, to streamline where we can the amount of software so it's not burdensome to parents and that communication is really transparent and effective. And additionally, it also reduces teacher workload as a consequence, because I think teachers are able to help students understand the different software without having to train them on all these different systems. Again, going back to the school who operated Google, all they had to learn was Google, nothing else. And I think that's really empowering because, again, it reduces not just teacher workload, but also cognitive strain for students. And again, that's something that, Ofsted's looking at. Cognitive strain and how can we ensure that students are cared for mentally, and again, not overpowering them with so much software, because there's so many out there. I just think we need to be careful again about what we're doing and why we're doing it. So the bigger picture, let's have a look at Ofsted quickly then. So we need to have and show to Ofsted strong leadership and governance. We need to ensure effective resource management, systems that support learning for safety and inclusion. Again, inclusion is going to be really paramount moving forward. An alignment with school priorities and clear oversight as to the digital provision. For ASI, quality assurance, compliance, effective management of digital resources, and clear strategic oversight. So what I'm going to show you now, I think, is what the Excel spreadsheet looks like. And then together we can explore why I've done this in this specific way. So over to the software audit. Let's have a look at the first page here. So here you can see I've just got a little README, and I think the purpose of this is obviously just to make sure that you understand how to use this. So it's got a brief overview as to the purpose, and again we've just explored that. How to fill it in. Now I've tried to ensure that this is an easily operated Excel spreadsheet, so most of it is just drop down menus, but as you can appreciate the specific name of the software, you guys will need to type in. But more often than not, it's going to be also calculating and drop downs to make sure that you have got a tool which you can just use easily and speedily. So I've also here got a total impact, and I suppose this spreadsheet will do two things. One, it allows you to understand the impact because it'll generate a score, and then it'll also give you a cost benefit score. And I suppose the cost benefit, when used in conjunction with the impact, can give you a bit of clarity as to, whether this software is needing to be renewed or not. So that's kind of one aspect of it. And I suppose we'll move on to what the template looks like. So here is the template. And this template has the software name at the beginning, the vendor, the supplier, the type of system. And you can see here there's a little drop-down box. And here you can see the categories that it fits into. And I suppose the reason why I've added this in is because depending on how big your school is, and don't forget, there's a range of schools within TOR, but if you're going to be, let's just say a high school, for example, it'll allow you to have a look at the range of different systems. And I think to have a look as to which type of system has the most impact and also the most buying power, I suppose, which, for example, is safeguarding the one that has the most tools being used and the most subscriptions. Departments, active users, contract renewal date, the annual cost. And then here you can see all of these are the drop downs. So the impact and curriculum delivery. And what we've got to do here is, it's usually beneficial. And what I've done is everything in purple, I would say, is up to the individual person who wants the software. So it's either a teacher or the head of department, because they're the ones who are able to sit and reflect. Well, actually, I bought this software last year. Again, let's say Timetable Rockstars. And actually, it's got 5 out of 5 in terms of the impact. It's phenomenal. Students love it. It's easy for teachers to get to grips with, I'm going to give it a 5. Then you've got the impact or workload efficiency. How much has this helped me to reduce my workload? So I'm going to go for a 3, for example, in this instance. Accuracy and reliability. So, for example, for this, I would say 2 things. The first is, when it comes to accuracy, am I getting the data that I need? Because one of the things, let's just say Kahoot, for example. One of the reasons I don't like Kahoot is great. It's great for gamified learning. It's great for getting a bit of competition. But when it comes to the data, you can't do much with it. Fine, who's first, second, third, it goes all the way down, I suppose. But you don't have the ability to really go to town on, okay, so this kid took this long to answer this question. I can clearly see there's a bit of hesitation there. This is a misconception, but it doesn't go that deep. So for me, the accuracy, which is one aspect of that, would be quite low for something like Kahoot. Reliability, I think, is more kind of downtime or how easy it is to use. So, for example, for the students, let's just say they are using Shobi. If Shobi hasn't worked, or it's got quite a bit of downtime, or something isn't quite right with it, then I'm going to, grade that down as well. So I think it's a bit of a hybridity between those two. The usage level. How often do I use this software? We're not actually saying here that software should be used for the uses of, the sake of being used. But what we are saying is that it should also justify value for money. And if I'm using a product once a year that I've spent money on, that probably isn't enough to justify it's being bought. So again, the usage level, that's in there. Evidence of impact. So this is really just a few bullet points, maybe even one, just to say this is the impact that we can get from this. And you want this to be numerical. So for example, I can say that by using Clicker, People Premium students have managed to make this much progress in comparison to last year when we didn't have it. Okay? And I think that evidence of impact is just really clear for Ofsted to say two things. One, this is the software we use and why we use it. But two, this is the impact it has had. Alternatives. Now, there's two trails of thought here. First of all, you've got the simple yes or no. Is there an alternative that can be used in school? But also, there's an ensure option, ask your tech. So, for example, like I said, you guys aren't necessarily meant to know that Google or Microsoft can do all of these things. So, by talking to your tech, we can give you that advice and that insight and actually offer an alternative, if there is one, to say, well, actually, have you considered this? Because this is a freer version. It doesn't do everything you want it to, but again, it is free and that's up to you guys to decide. So, unsure is okay to put in there. And then there's some notes as an alternative. So when you've had that discussion, you can then put into the notes, okay, this is cheap. It doesn't do quite what we want, so therefore actually it is or it isn't worth spending that extra bit of money for. So again, everything in purple has been so far the head department. SLT now needs to be in that orange. So, strategic fit. How well does this fit in with the overarching strategic aims for the school? 1 to 5 again, drop down. To what extent does this support the school improvement plan? Is this a priority or is it not? Again, something to think about. Supporting digital strategy. How well is the digital strategy supported within this? And, you can have a look at your roadmap, for example. Is it explicit, or if it isn't, then that's fine. But it just allows you to understand to what extent this is really a priority. Supporting SEND, and again, I've put this in there because of the new framework that's coming through. I think since schools now need to become more inclusive than ever before, SEND needs to have its own strand there where we can demonstrate actually this is bringing students on and it is inclusive. Now, earlier we saw the teachers say this is going to reduce my workload, but it's also important, I think, to marry up realism versus, I think, the perspective of it. And that's where the workload questionnaire comes in for SLT. What's your perception of this reducing the workload, and is it? And the reason why it's important, I think, there is because if it's a software which spans multiple subjects, one subject might say, you know what, this is fantastic, but another subject might say, well, actually, we're having difficulty with this. So I think the input from SLT there is going to be really important to, again, marry up those statistics, okay? Support pupil outcomes, yes or no? Now, that might sound a bit obvious, but I'll explain. So when I was at one of the local primary schools, they bought on their iPads a calming software for autism, basically spirals. So you look at this iPad and it shows you a video of a spiral in order to calm them. It doesn't directly link or support pupil outcomes. It's for students to feel calm and to self-regulate. And fine, the two are, linked in some way, but actually I think it's important to prioritise the outcomes because there are other opportunities to regulate that individual. Fine, that might be effective, but again, it will cost. So that's why I think that's in there. Now, after you've calculated all of those, you'll see that there is a total impact score, which will be automatically calculated, and a cost-benefit score. And using those two in conjunction with each other, you'll be able to have a renewal recommendation, which is going to be either obviously yes or no, plus a justification, and a renewal priority. And it's really useful, I think, just to have a days until renewal. And you don't necessarily have to have that in the column. That's up to you if you guys want to get rid of it. But I would probably have to have a countdown, and I'm not saying you obviously manually change it, but you can just do a little bit of coding. Again, ask your tech or do some research yourself where it'll automatically calculate it for you, or just have this is the date and the month that it expires, just so you are not surprised when this bill comes through saying, oh, you've actually been charged for hundreds of pounds for this software, and actually you didn't really want it. So there's a dashboard here which will add some charts to it when you have calculated it. And here is an example. Again, I just wanted to show you guys what it would look like. So here are 3 softwares, and you've got your active users here, renewal dates, and if we go all the way along, what we can see, and this is I think the most important part, I'm just going to expand some of these columns so that we can see them, is here, the total impact score, and again, highest is best, and I will show that in a second, and then the cost benefit score, which calculates it as a percentage. What do those percentages mean? That's the question. So if we go over to the instructions, we can see here, example interpretation. So again, as I said, the impact, the higher score, the greater the impact. You can also see here, the greater the percentage, the greater the value as well. So if the percentage is 1.5-ish or above, I would be, so it says actually here, so 1.5 is an excellent value renew. If it's between 1 and 1.4, it's acceptable. It's worth it still. If it is 0.5 to 0.99, this is where you're going to want to consider alternatives. What we're saying is it does what it does, but the impact isn't necessarily worth the cost. There might be better alternatives here. And if it's less than 0.5, that's where you're wanting to really, reconsider. This has no or very little impact in it, and as a consequence, we do need to get rid of it. And the automatic score, so if it's 20 to 25, it's high impact. If it is 14 to 19, it's medium. And if it's 5 to 13, again, it's not having the impact that we need. So again, this is just a tool for you to have a think about. But I think when you have a look at example, hopefully you're in agreement that with all of the data inputted in here, 2 things. 1, it isn't actually arduous. It is 2 teams speaking together to create an holistic, evidence-based interpretation as to their software and the impact that it has. And the second one is hopefully you can see that it documents what it needs to document to tell that story. So when Ofsted comes in, you're able to say, this is the journey that we've undertaken digitally with the software, and the reasons why we've made, the choices is X, Y, and Z, and this is the impact. So, what do we have? Hopefully, I've demonstrated to you that schools don't need more digital tools, they need the right ones, and the way that we get that is through impacting. A software audit such as this gives you guys leaders the visibility, the clarity to ensure that every digital tool that you've got contributes meaningfully to the teaching and learning curriculum. At a time when Ofsted and ISI emphasise strong leadership, governance and effective systems, this audit is more important now, I think, than ever before. And ultimately, it ensures that every pound that you have got and that you spend goes the mile and ensures that students make the progress that they deserve to have. Thank you for listening, and as always, if you have any questions, please send me a message.